Okay, so good morning, everyone. So hope you had a nice breakfast and a good night's rest. And now we're going to continue, surprise, surprise, with the suttas. And so far we had a look at one sutta, and it is probably in many ways the most important one. And so for that reason, I have looked at that in quite a bit of detail. And as we go along now, the remainder of the suttas are kind of a support for this main kind of paradigm, if you like, of meditation practice, which is mindfulness of breathing here. So the rest now is kind of fleshing out the details and understanding the practices and what to do to support that particular meditation. And so it kind of all comes together in a sense, if you like, as one big whole called meditation practice. So let's see what happens as we go along with this. So the next one is called the Cetanakaraniya Sutta, which is here translated as making a wish, or it could be translated as to be done by intention. To be done by an act of will is another way of translating this, which is more kind of direct. Making a wish is a bit more idiomatic, perhaps, but to be done by an act of will is probably a bit more complete, because a wish is a kind of maybe only one type of will, whereas here we are dealing with will in general. And this is one of the suttas that I usually look at every time I teach a retreat, because it is quite fundamental in how the Buddhist path works, and especially how meditation works. And you'll see in a second how it kind of illuminates the meditation we looked at with mindfulness of breathing here. So this sutta is found in the Anguttara Nikaya, the numbered or numerical discourses. And this book, for those of you who are not so familiar with the suttas, is divided into 11 chapters based on the number of items that is you find in the sutta. So there's the chapter of ones are suttas with one item, chapter of twos are all the suttas with two items, all the way up to chapter 11, which is suttas with 11 items in them. So this is the chapter of tens, so 10 items. Sutta number 2. That's how the system of reference works there. AN 10.2 means Anguttara Nikaya. That is the numerical discourses, chapter 10, Sutta 2. So you're welcome to ask about these things if you wish if you have any problems with finding these references. All of these things are found on the website Sutta Central. All of the suttas are available there. So let's see what the Buddha has to say here. So mendicants, an ethical person who has fulfilled ethical conduct need not make a wish. May I have no regrets. It is only natural that an ethical person has no regrets. So let me just start with that one. So an ethical person is one who has sila, and as I mentioned yesterday, the word sila is very broad. It includes probably more than what we normally think of as ethics in the modern day. It has to do with the mind as well, it has to do with our whole personality, it has to do with positive and negative ethics, doing what is right, not just avoiding what is wrong. So it's a very broad idea on the entire kind of conduct of a person, all aspects of personality here. So this is a very important point, because this process only works if we understand fully what ethics actually means in this context. And then you have, he says, well, if you do have that ethical conduct, if it is really profound, then he has rendered this the next part here as you need not make a wish. And the Pali for that is na cetanaya karaniya. And the literal meaning of na cetanaya karaniya is actually much stronger than you need not make a wish. It means this is not to be done by intention. This, in other words, this cannot be done by intention. That is a much stronger than you need not make a wish. Yeah, it need not. Okay, you need not, but maybe you can. Yeah, it's kind of uncertain. It's up to you. But you don't have to if you don't want to. That's kind of the feeling we need. Yeah, there's no need, but actually it is quite specific. This is not to be done or cannot be done by an act of intention. And I notice here that Bhante Sujato has followed Bhikkhu Bodhi, and both of them unfortunately have got this wrong. So I did mention it once to Bhante Sujato, but he probably forgot about it in the meantime, and then he still rendered in this way. But I'll have to follow up with him and let him know, because it makes a big difference. Yeah, it makes a big difference in meaning whether it cannot be done by intention or need not be done by. You need not make a wish. The meaning is quite significantly different. And so the point here is that, again, this idea that this is a natural sequence. It happens as a matter of course. You have to put in the foundation pieces, put in the basis, and once the basis is in, then the meditation happens by itself. You sit back, you wait, and these states arise. Trying to will them into existence is not going to work. You cannot force these things to be here. They come because of the causing conditions. Now, those causing conditions can include a little bit of nudging of the mind. So for example, sila here can include sil anusati, the recollection of sila. So for example, you use that in the beginning, you think, okay, I'm living a good life. Yeah, actually I'm living a good life. Gee, forgot about that. And you feel a bit of happiness because of that. And then that aids your process, or the process, it aids the process rather than your process of meditation. It kind of helps that process to get started at the very beginning. So it is a natural thing, and that is the point here. The willing doesn't really have any space here. And that's why meditation really is about patience and waiting and allowing things to happen. And this is a simile, again, I learned from Ajahn Brahm. He uses this simile of a little child. A little child is given a seed by its mum. The mum says, okay, son or daughter, put this seed in the ground and we'll see how the plant kind of comes out. We'll see kind of the little sprout coming out of the ground and these things. And the little child dutifully goes every day, puts water on this little seed, puts it under a few centimeters of earth, and then puts water over it every day, and kind of gets a bit impatient. Mummy, when is the sprout going to come out? Nothing is happening. What's going on? And Mummy says, okay, just wait, be patient. And after a few days, you put the right amount of water, not too much to drown the seed, not too little so it dries out. The sun comes and does its kind of miracle stuff. And then after a while, suddenly the seed comes out of the ground and the little child gets very excited, like little children tend to get. Look, Mummy is coming out of the ground. And then the mum said, okay, now just be patient and it will grow. And eventually it will become a nice sunflower or whatever when it comes out of the ground. But, it grows very slowly. For a child, even if it grows fast by our standards, maybe a centimeter per day or whatever, for a little child, this is very, very slow. And so after a while, it gets a bit impatient. So it decides to help nature. And the way that a little child helps nature is to hold on to the sprout and kind of pull it a little bit so it grows faster. Bang, not done. Oh, Mummy, what happened to the little flower? It's gone. It's died. It's in my hand now. It's no longer in the ground. Okay, another seed. Try again. So this is the thing. Nature has a certain speed to it. It happens according to cause and conditions. You cannot force nature to happen. And if meditation practice is a natural evolution of the mind according to cause and conditions, if you try to make it happen, you will destroy it, just like you destroy the plant. Because you have to allow things to happen according to their nature, rather than to force them. Is there anything we can do? Yes, you can water at the right time. You can make sure that get the clouds out of the way so the sun shines on the, in the right space, and all of these kind of things. And that is equivalent to nudging the mind, by remembering your good conduct or remembering some act of generosity or whatever it is that gives some positive feeling to the mind, some positive perception that will then aid the mind to make this process happen. So we can do a little bit, but not much. And if you do it in the wrong way, by directly trying to affect the meditation, rather than indirectly via remembering these anusatis, then you're going to end up destroying it. So this is very important, and this is where this comes from, this idea that the previous Anapanasati Sutta, I said, is mostly about waiting, hanging out, waiting for things to happen. This is kind of where that comes from. And you can see how you need to read the suttas from different angles to get the whole picture of what is going on. So once you are really ethical, then you have no regrets, No regrets because you have done everything right. And sometimes people have regrets even though they have done everything right. It's kind of interesting because sometimes the shocks in life are so big that even though you are a really good person, still you blame yourself for things that happened. So please try to overcome that. Please try to see the difference between what is really worthy of blame and what is just, things, sometimes really difficult things happen in life. And then we somehow have to find the way beyond that. So the more pure your conduct is, the less blame, self-blame you will have, the more less regret you will have. And sometimes that regret can manifest in many ways. It can manifest, for example, as a direct kind of verbal blame, I'm not good enough. But it can also just manifest as a darkening of the mind. The mind doesn't become bright. So it's like the mind knows that it isn't kind of pure, and so the mind doesn't brighten up in the meditation. So this can manifest in different ways. It doesn't necessarily mean this kind of, oh no, I'm a terrible person, doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that you don't have access to that brightness and joy here. So, and then he has here, it is only natural. And again, I would prefer a translation such as, it is in accordance with nature. It is in accordance with nature that an ethical person has no regrets. The Pali word is dhammata. Dhammata means basically accordance with nature. Again, it is only natural to me. It's a little bit on the weak side. If it is in accordance with nature, well, it's to me is a more kind of, it shows you that this is cause and effect process going on here. So, So then the sutta goes on. That is kind of some of the foundational things you need to know to understand the rest of the sutta. So let me just read through it now, and then we can look at the details in a second here. When you have no regrets, you need not make a wish. May I feel joy? Or when you have no regrets, it cannot be done by an act of will. May I feel joy? It is according to nature that joy springs up when you have no regrets. When you feel joy, it is not to be done by an act of the will. May I experience rapture? It is according to nature that rapture arises when you are joyful. When your mind is full of rapture, it cannot be done by an act of will. May my body experience tranquility. It is accordance with nature that your body becomes tranquil when your mind is full of rapture. When your body is tranquil, you cannot be done by an act of will. May I feel bliss? It is according to nature that you feel bliss when the body is tranquil. When you feel bliss, it cannot be done by an act of will. May my mind be stilled. It is accordance with nature that the mind is stilled when you feel bliss. Let me stop there, because here we have already arrived at samadhi, which is kind of one of those important stages in the meditation or on the path. So we can do the last part afterwards. So you will notice here that a lot of this is very similar to what we have seen in the Anapanasati Sutta, mindfulness of breathing. And this was the point I was making at the beginning with the mindfulness of breathing sutta, that there is a lot of parallels between the different core themes of Buddhism that you find in different places. So this is one of these core themes, and it parallels very beautifully with the mindfulness of breathing. And these, again, also parallel very closely with the 7 factors of awakening. Yeah, so these are almost the different ways, basically, of expressing the same thing here. And one of the things that is kind of really extraordinary here is the number of positive qualities that come out through the meditation. It starts off with joy, pamudja, then you have the then you have rapture, which is the piti. Then after rapture you have tranquility, which is passaddhi, the peace of the mind. Then after passaddhi you have bliss, which is sukha. And from sukha you have samadhi, which is stillness. He has immersion, that's kind of Bhante Sujato's translation, but I tend to think of it as stillness. And so you can see here it's all about 2 things really, happiness of some sort, or tranquility or peace of some sort. That's all it is about really. And this gives you again this idea of what meditation really is about. When we talk about mindfulness of breathing, it's all about these 2 qualities. These are the main signposts on the road for you to know whether your meditation is going right or not. Sometimes people talk about insight, and insight as knowing how you're doing on the path. Did you get any insights or not? But insights are much more difficult to know whether they have really, whether they are successful or not, whether it really is profound or not, whether it really is valuable or not, because it's easy to be distorted about it or not really understand the depth of the insight or whatever. So it's much better to use tranquility and happiness as a guide or a gauge to decide how well the meditation is going here. Because tranquility and happiness are quite clear in the mind. You know whether you are really peaceful or not. You know whether you are experiencing happiness. At least most of the time you do. You can fool yourself about those things as well, but it's less likely that you will fool yourself with these things. And so even insight should be measured by these factors. So if you do have an insight, you should ask yourself, does it lead to greater tranquility and happiness? Does it improve my samatha meditation? When I watch the breath, do I go deeply, more quickly, more easily? So everything, all meditation should really be measured by these qualities, because these are the qualities that are easy to measure meditation by. Whereas insight is actually much more tricky, because just the nature of insight, it makes it more tricky. And so if you really do have insight, then even these things will happen much faster as a consequence. And so, so that is one part of this, but also just so delightful if this is what meditation is. Who would not want to do meditation? The whole world, if we could get that message out, the whole world will come here and sit with their legs crossed. And Deepika would have a tremendous job making food for everyone. It would be really hard. Because it's such a beautiful message, isn't it? If you read that thing, it's like, wow, who would not want this? It's like so obvious in a sense that everyone actually wants this if they understood what was going on. But somehow, this getting the message out, there's some blockage there. Somehow we're not really able to get it out. And so we probably need to kind of be better salespeople. I think that's part of the problem. So we need some good, maybe we should get some connections in the advertising industry and see what we can do. But I don't know, to me it's like, of course this is what I want to do with my life. I mean, who would not want to do this with their life? Whether you're a layperson or monastic is not so important, but what you want to do is you want to kind of, apply yourself to these things, because this obviously has to do with the meaning of life. So all of these things, I have already discussed most of these things already, because these vocabulary is the same as we had before. In this case, it starts with joy, which is pamudja. So joy is that initial gladness when you start to feel really just glad in a general way because things are going well. And here it arises out of non-regret, because you live well, you know you're living well, you have compassion and kindness for pretty much everyone around you. At worst, you have upekkha towards some people, maybe because you find it hard to have that metta towards them. Fair enough. Even the Buddha says sometimes upekkha is the right attitude to some people. You find a few suttas about that. So, that's okay. So it starts with that. And then it kind of just intensifies, becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, deeper and deeper happiness, bliss, joy, deeper and deeper tranquility, until you come to samadhi. And so what is the cause of samadhi here is interesting. It's sukha is the cause of samadhi. Happiness or bliss is the cause of samadhi. So basically, to be able to access these deep states of mind, you have to learn to experience happiness and bliss in meditation. Without that bliss, there is no real samadhi. If it is a dry kind of stillness, it is not going to take you to the full samadhi that is required on the path. So we need to learn to experience these joys and blisses. And for that reason, I will talk more about this later on, how to bring this up, because it is such an important part of this path. So samadhi comes from the bliss. But then the next step here is even more interesting. So let's have a look at the next step now. When your mind is stilled, or immersed in samadhi, you cannot make a determination, you cannot make a intention. You cannot do this with an act of intention. May I truly know and see? It is accordance with nature that you truly know and see when your mind is stilled. So this is kind of where it gets really interesting, and this matches with what I was saying before. This idea that the cause of insight, truly knowing and seeing, is here the translation of Yatabhuta Jnana Dassana, which is a standard Pali term for seeing or insight. If you want to have real insight, samadhi is the cause. This is what this is saying. Samadhi is the way to get insight. And so everywhere in the suttas you have the same message: samadhi, samadhi, samadhi. That is where you want to go. And this is interesting, because you wonder then, well, what about vipassana? What is really vipassana? Vipassana is just clear seeing, and vipassana is part of all of this. It is not really distinguished from these things. This whole practice includes vipassana within it, because if you are truly peaceful, if you are truly stilled in the mind will be very clear, and vipassana will come as part of that. So the two things again come together. Does that mean that there is no such thing as vipassana practices? Well, actually there is, but they're not really called vipassana in the suttas. They are called things like developing your perceptions. So, for example, they talk about the anicca sanya, which is the development of the perception of impermanence, or unreliability, or uncertainty, or how we want to translate anicca. And so that is a kind of vipassana, because there you are directly looking at the three characteristics of existence, understanding reality. You're trying to see things more clearly. You're trying to develop right view and these kind of things. So that could be called vipassana, except that it is not in the suttas. It is just called development of perception. So that is closer to the idea of vipassana. So there are some suttas that distinguish between vipassana and samatha, but it's only a very, very small number. And if you want to discuss those, we can, and we can put it into this framework if you wish. But I will leave it up to you to bring that up if you want to. So again, samadhi leads to seeing things according to reality. And of course, one seeing in accordance with reality, one of the most important ones, is stream entry. Stream entry, sotapanna, is when you see things for the first time fully in accordance with reality. And so what this is saying is that samadhi is the cause for stream entry. What is that samadhi? Well, the main aspect of that samadhi is the jhanas, because the jhanas are everywhere in the suttas. When we talk about samadhi, that is the main thing we talk about. And so what this is essentially saying, if you want to become a stream enterer, practice the jhanas. That's what it's saying here. And then people will say, "Oh, but is it necessary to practice the jhanas? Is it really required? Can I become a stream mentor without? I'd rather not try the jhanas. They're so difficult." But if you think the jhanas are difficult, stream entry is much more difficult, right? So it's still kind of getting things the wrong way around. Jhana is less letting go than stream entry, so by definition it is easier. And so for that reason, is it possible or not? I don't know. I can't really say. But the point is that this is the natural progression, to go via the jhana, then to stream entry. And if you don't want to follow the natural progression, you're just making life more difficult for yourself. So this is what this is saying. So the question, is it necessary to have jhana, is kind of a redundant and a silly question. It's a red herring. It doesn't really mean anything. So so samadhi basically means jhana. It means a few other things as well in the suttas, but that's the main meaning by a large margin here. And then comes the rest of the sutta. When you truly know and see, you cannot make an intention. May I become disillusioned and dispassionate. It is in accordance with nature to become disillusioned and dispassionate when you truly know and see. When you're disillusioned and dispassionate, you cannot make an intention. May I realize knowledge and vision of freedom. It is according to nature to realize knowledge and vision of freedom when you are disillusioned and dispassionate. So we have seen the most important things so far. Now what we're seeing is the rest of the path all the way to awakening. And it is, these are the very profound things, but let me just go through them anyway so you have some idea what is going on here. So the first thing is that when you truly know and see, you become disillusioned and dispassionate. What does that mean? Well, disillusioned here is Bhante Sujata's translation of nibbida. And this word nibbida is very interesting because what it means, when you truly know and see, what does that mean? What are you truly knowing and seeing? And what you are truly knowing and seeing is the 5 khandhas in terms of the 3 characteristics. In other words, you're seeing yourself. My mind and my body is dukkha, is impermanent. There is no self. That is what you're seeing. You can see through introspection that these things are going on based on samadhi. And when you see that everything in your experience is dukkha, ultimately because you can't control it, ultimately because you don't know where it's going to go next, even though the jhanas may be very blissful, still they last only so long, then they disappear again. And ultimately they too are inferior to the even higher kind of happiness that is available. So when you see that everything is dukkha, everything is burning, everything is really fundamentally problematic. We don't know that in ordinary life. It's impossible to see without this kind of insight. When you see that, you're no longer interested. In fact, the mind is repelled by this. Just like you are repelled by anything which is disgusting and dukkha, the mind turns away. It doesn't want to have anything to do with it. And this is the idea of disillusionment here, is the idea of the mind turning away from something that is inherently problematic. It is like, I usually like the simile of the hot plate. If you put your hand on a hot plate by accident because you think it's cold, but someone else has just used it before, you put it down, the automatic reaction is to withdraw your hand. You don't have to think, should I withdraw it or not? And it's too late already if you think like that. You already burnt yourself. So you straight away, you just withdraw your hand because you know it is something within you leads to that automatic reaction. And this is exactly the same thing here. It's an automatic reaction of the mind. The mind rejects the world, rejects the 5 khandhas, rejects the body and mind. And so, to me, a nice translation of nibbida is something like aversion or repulsion. You are repelled by these things. You're moving away from it. Disillusionment, I guess, is okay, but it's kind of this strong feeling of you are rejecting something. You're rejecting everything in the world, basically. So this is what is going on here. You see dukkha, you don't want to have anything more to do with it. And so you reject it, and then the next thing after you reject it is that you lose your interest, so you become dispassionate. Dispassionate here means you don't have any desire for it anymore. How can you desire dukkha? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Sometimes people, of course, still desire dukkha, but that's because they think there is a self in that dukkha, and so they would rather have a dukkha self than no self at all. That is the problem with the sense of self. It leads you astray, as they say here. So you lose your interest in those things, and that's why craving disappears. There cannot be any craving anymore, because actually there's nothing worth craving, and that includes the craving to exist. You can't even crave to exist anymore, because there's nothing in existence that actually is interesting. This is hard to understand, right? This is actually really profound. How can you not crave to exist? If someone comes and they want to kill you, you say, oh yeah, whatever, yeah, it's up to you, yeah. You decide if you want to kill me. Yeah, either way is okay. And that's kind of strange idea. Yeah, this is, but this is kind of, an arahant is not afraid of death. In fact, an arahant is someone who sees death as a positive thing. In the Theravada, I'm not sure if in the Theravada, but certainly in the Theravada, there's a number of these senior monks, including Venerable Sariputta, who says that an arahant is like a workman waiting for his wages. The wages is when you die. Yay, death, finally. This is kind of the arahant for you. So this is, again, the idea of turning the world upside down. Most people, when you said, would you like to die? You said, thank you very much, but not now, or something like that. Yeah, this is the wrong time for me to die. Or actually, you might use stronger words than that, but... so again, this completely alternative way of thinking about the world. So you become disillusioned, you lose all craving for all of these things, and then finally you realize the knowledge and vision of freedom. You know that you are free. You have no doubt about it. Freedom has arisen. And freedom again, this idea of coming out of jail. Yeah, you are free. What a wonderful thing that is to be free, coming out of these things. So then you are free, and you know that you are free. If you have any doubts, if you think you are not sure if you're an arahant, you are not an arahant. Okay. All right, so that is the basic, that is the sutta. So let's have a look at the last paragraph here. It just recapitulates what we have seen so far. And so, mendicants, the knowledge and vision of freedom is the purpose and benefit of disillusionment and dispassion. Disillusionment and dispassion is the purpose and benefit of truly knowing and seeing. Truly knowing and seeing is the purpose and benefit of stillness. Stillness is the purpose and benefit of bliss. Bliss is the purpose and benefit of tranquility. Tranquility is the purpose and benefit of rapture. Rapture is the purpose and benefit of joy. Joy is the purpose and benefit of not having regrets. Not having regrets is the purpose and benefit of skillful ethics. And so, mendicants, good qualities flow on and fill up from one to the other, for going from the near shore to the far shore. So you fill up the good qualities, and this is kind of one of the important points here, that because this whole sequence is largely automatic, because all you have to do is to sit back and allow it to happen, what does that mean? How do we make it work? Well, how you make it work is to focus on the first one. If the rest is automatic, the first one becomes incredibly important. And so we need to really fulfill, fill up the first one. And so if your meditation is not strong enough yet, it's because your ethical conduct is not, maybe not as good as it could be. Don't take this as a criticism, please, because it is not a criticism at all. I know all of you are already very good people, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And I know many of you, and I have no doubt about that is true. But the thing is that the bar here is really, really high. It's an incredibly high bar in Buddhism. And so you want to be, you want to purify yourself to the point where you have metta and compassion all the time for everyone in the whole world. You don't really get upset with anyone anymore. And that is a very rare and very profound thing to achieve. And so we can almost always do a little bit better. And if your meditation hasn't reached that point yet, you need to ask yourself, how can you purify yourself more? How can your ethical conduct be even better? How can you have compassion for all these people who seem like scallywags in the world, right? But actually you can, and it's not that hard. And it comes back to this idea of understanding that people are the product of cause and conditions. They don't know what they're doing. They are blind. They are foolish. They create suffering for themselves and for others all the time. And we are all in that boat together, not understanding what is going on. So how can you really blame anyone at the end of the day? Everyone does what they think is right, regardless of how deluded they are. And that is the problem. Even people who are evil think that they're doing something good. That's kind of the weird thing about this. And so after a while, you just feel for the suffering because you understand that actually it is just all of these things, that blindness rubbing up against more blindness. And when blindness rubs up against blindness, you get kind of all kinds of problems in the world. What is really nice and what is kind of extraordinary is that still, even though there is so much problems, there's also a lot of goodness in the world. And so then you focus on the goodness. And otherwise you get too depressed if you just look at the suffering all the time. So don't look at all the suffering. Rejoice that despite all the problems, despite all the issues, still there is so much kindness in the world. That is the extraordinary thing. And there is, ordinary people going about their ordinary lives with a good heart, with kindness. It's such a beautiful thing to see that. And they know somehow deep inside that this is the right way to do things, even though life may be difficult, even though conditions conspire against them and make their existence miserable sometimes. And so this is so you focus in the right way. First of all, you understand that actually everyone in the world has problems. Everyone is suffering. Look beyond the facade. Look beyond what is kind of in your face. Most people present a facade that's kind of very solid and very together, but behind the facade is all shambles and kind of really problematic. This is kind of a little bit what life is like. And so you look behind the facade, because if you look at the facade, then you will start to think they must be evil because they got their act together and they still behave badly. So what's going on here? Actually, the facade is misleading. So first of all, understand the dukkha in people, understand the out-of-controlness of people, understand the conditioning of people. Then you have compassion. Secondly, after having done that, then you understand that actually there's a lot to rejoice about in the world as well. And the two things coming together is a very powerful way of perceiving the world. And based on that, you should be able to purify your sila quite deeply. This is just my suggestion. There's many ways of going about these things, but I think this is quite a powerful way of reflecting on people in the world. Okay. That is the Chaitana Karaniya Sutta. So cannot be done by an act of intention. Cannot be done by an act of intention is how I would render that and bring that into every step on this in this sutta. I think that one of the reasons why Bhante Sujato has put need not make a wish is because it flows nicely in English and it sounds quite nice. Whereas cannot be done by intention is actually quite hard to make it flow in the text, and you can see I'm having some problems myself to make it flow there when I was reading through it. So that might be one reason. So it is always a struggle to get the language nice, but also the meaning as close as possible to the Pali, and it's kind of a balancing act sometimes. But it's important not to lose important points of Dhamma, because if you lose them, then people won't really get what's going on here. Okay, so let us have a look at the next sutta. And the next sutta is on the same theme, and I've only picked out the most important parts of this sutta, but it looks at it from a slightly different point of view, and this is a very a very important point of view. And the point of view here is vital conditions. And the Pali for vital condition is Upanisa. And this is, again, Bhante Sujato's translation. And it shows the same sequence from the viewpoint of vital conditions. So mendicants, an unethical person who lacks ethics, or we could say an ethical person who has ethics on the positive side, but here let's look at the negative side. They have destroyed the vital condition for having no regrets. A vital condition, in my mind, is too weak. It should be the vital condition. This really is the condition that matters. Yeah, the whole point of picking out one condition like this is that this is the thing that really is important. So I think that should be the vital condition here. When there are regrets, one has destroyed the vital condition for joy. Yeah, when one has no joy, one has destroyed the vital condition for rapture. When you have no rapture, you have destroyed the vital condition for tranquility. When you have no tranquility, you have destroyed the vital condition for bliss. When you destroy the vital condition for bliss, you have destroyed. When you don't have any bliss, you have destroyed the vital condition for samadhi, for stillness, etc., etc., all the way to the end. And when there is no disillusion and dispassion, or if you like, when there is no repulsion and lack of craving, one who lacks these things has destroyed the vital condition for knowledge and vision of freedom. So so here it has this vital condition idea, and that makes it very clear that each of these things are fundamental for the next thing to arise. You have to have the previous one, otherwise the one that comes afterward doesn't arise. And so this kind of adds. The previous one was more on that it arises without an act of will, but this one here is more about how important one is for the next one. So this is kind of the idea here. I think the reason why Bhante Sujato has a vital condition and the vital condition is that there are many conditions that come into this. And so you kind of want to make the point that when all of these conditions come together, then it will work. But to my mind, the point here, yes, there may be many conditions, but there is one that is vital, one that is essential, and that's the one that is given here. I think that might be the difference here in translation, why the translation is slightly different. And then comes the simile for this. Suppose there was a tree that lacked branches and foliage. Its shoots and bark, softwood and hardwood, would not grow to fullness. In the same way, you have this whole sequence. If you have no branches and foliage, then the rest of the tree will not grow, and eventually the hardwood, the core of the tree itself, becomes stunted and doesn't really expand. Nothing happens. So those branches and foliage, they may not seem all that important because they are just the external part of the tree, or the kind of the ends of the branches. This may seem less important. The trunk may seem to be what really matters, but actually the trunk completely depends on those little things. And so the little things that we do in daily life, all the little things that we kind of build up, every word we say, every act we do, every little thing of generosity, every thought we have matters. And it matters enormously. It's like a leaf on the tree. And without those leaves, nothing is going to happen. And so remember that every time you go wrong, you're setting yourself back on the path. And there isn't really any time for that setting back. I need to remind myself of this as well, because it's inevitable that sometimes you do things that are silly, stupid, and take you backwards. And so every time you make a mistake, you take a step back. You cannot really afford that. Time is short. Death is always around the corner. You don't know when it's going to happen. Now is the opportunity, not in the next second, but right now. What am I doing right now? Wow, I'm talking. Okay, is that a good idea? Yeah, okay, right now, talking is a good idea. This is the time to talk. Am I talking in the right way? Am I using right speech? I think so. It's about Dhamma. I'm not being kind of too harsh towards anyone. Okay, good. So I'm probably on the right track. Yeah, okay. It's good to be reminded. Everyone is to be reminded, yeah, all the time. It's so easy to forget these things. And this is, in a sense, what distinguishes the stream mentor from ordinary people, is that in the stream mentor, the Dhamma is so fully integrated into their psychology, they never really forget about these things. Yeah, the idea of virtue, the right view, is kind of hovering there in the background, always guiding them in the right way. So they are always ethical. That's why they are said to be fulfilled in ethics. There's that beautiful simile in the Kosambhya Sutta. This is Majjhima Nikaya 48. And this is one of the few sutras that talk about the stream mentor in quite a bit of detail. And it says there that the stream mentor is perfect in virtue. And it says it's like a cow with a newborn calf. And when the cow kind of moves around the field and grazes here and grazes there, and I don't know what cows do, they probably don't do all that much except for grazing. That's pretty much what their life consists of. But wherever the cow grazes, it always has one eye on the calf. It never really kind of lets go of that calf completely. I guess it's like a mother with a baby, right? It's the same kind of thing. You always have one eye on the baby, I suppose. Yeah, I guess that's how it works. Yeah, because the baby is the most important thing. So whatever you do, one eye on the baby, the other eye on whatever it is that you're doing. Yeah. And so maybe a father as well, for that matter, yeah, presumably, to some extent, maybe not quite as much as the mother, probably a stronger bond there, but, a similar kind of idea. And so this is the idea of the stream mentor. Just like that cow always has one eye on the calf, in the same way, the stream mentor always has one eye on Adisila, Chitta, Adipanya, yeah, these are basically the whole path, basically. But the most important thing there for ordinary day, for the daily practice, is the sila, the morality. So that's what we want to try to do ourselves as well. We want to be so reminded of the importance of this that we never really lose sight of it. The importance of living in the right way, doing the right thing at all times. That is kind of what is the, if you like, the putting in place the conditions for the whole path to work. That is what we're doing here. Okay, and then comes the reverse side. An ethical person who has fulfilled ethics has fulfilled the vital condition for not having regrets. When there are no regrets, one who has no regrets has fulfilled the vital condition for joy. When there is joy, you have fulfilled the vital condition for rapture. When there is rapture, you have fulfilled the vital condition for tranquility. When there is tranquility, you have fulfilled the vital condition for bliss. When there is bliss, you have fulfilled the vital condition for stillness or samadhi. When there is samadhi, you have fulfilled the vital condition for truly knowing and seeing. When there is truly knowing and seeing, you have fulfilled the vital condition for disillusionment and dispassion. When there is disillusionment and dispassion, you have fulfilled the vital condition for knowledge and vision of freedom. So it builds up and up and up, building more and more powerfully as you purify the ethics. And you will see that when you meditate, sometimes you come to a plateau, it doesn't go beyond a certain level or whatever. And then you go back to the foundation, to the ethics, you purify that more. And then that plateau gets raised. The plateau goes higher. Next time around you go on a retreat after a year living well, the plateau, the end point, or where the mind stops, is higher than it was before. Because you have purified more at the beginning. The mind is more able to move deeper in the meditation all by itself, because you have done the foundation work. Yeah, this whole process just goes deeper in this way. And so it's a gradual thing. Suppose there was a tree that was complete with branches and foliage. Its shoots, you're complete. All the aspects of morality have been fulfilled. Its shoots, bark, softwood, and heartwood would grow to fullness as a consequence. So that is these two little suttas that kind of flesh out a little bit on the ideas that we talked about yesterday on mindfulness of breathing. All of this is about meditation practice. It doesn't actually say anything about meditation in here, which is kind of interesting. And so you can see what this means is that the Buddha is here talking about meditation from different angles. In the Anapanasati Sutta, he is saying mostly about what we need to do. You need to watch the breath, and then when you watch the breath, these things happen. So it's almost more about how you apply yourself. You apply yourself to watching the breath. So that is one way of thinking about meditation. Another way of thinking about meditation is what actually happens to you when you apply yourself in the right way. What is the psychological development, if you wish? And this sutta is here talking about that psychological development, how your mind changes over time as the meditation happens. The bliss, the joy. You can also add energy in there. You can add mindfulness. All of these things are developing together as the mind develops in this way. So these are then slightly different angles. And this is, to me, one of the kind of aspects of the Buddha's genius, is his ability to throw light on the spiritual path from different angles. And every angle gives you slightly different information. Every angle adds to the picture of the Dhamma as one big picture, one big insight on the night of awakening of the Buddha. And that is what we are seeing here. Okay, everyone, that is all for this morning. So have a nice lunch, and we'll see you again at 3 o'clock.